So, I was performing a seance the other day, and now my place is haunted and full of ghosts. Luckily, there is someone who can help me. Who am I gonna call? Ghosthunter? Yeah, Ghosthunter, a third-person shooter for the PlayStation 2, developed by Sony Computer Entertainment Cambridge Studio, with a European version published by Sony in 2003, and the North American and Japanese versions published by Namco and EA in 2004. I only know this game because it's one of the few PS2 titles with a Greek voice dub, and as a Greek god myself, that fills me with pride. And when I say pride, I mean immense shame, because the dub is so bad that words cannot describe it. I mean, they hired a random band that got famous from a reality show to do some of the voices. What did I even expect? Anyway, that doesn't matter, because we have a fairly competent atmospheric shooter in our hands. With a little bit of horror here and a little bit of humor there, it's got all the classic ingredients for some schlocky B-movie action. Let's arm ourselves with our trusty shotgun and get to busting ghosts, as well as these nuts. Like every good story, Ghosthunter begins with our hero fucking things up in a spectacular fashion. But let's take things from the beginning. Detective Lazarus Jones, along with his partner Anna Steele, are sent to investigate reports of unusual sounds from Montsey High, an abandoned school in Detroit. Apparently, a professor named Richmond murdered 10 students. Although he was never found, there was no motive, no murder weapon, and no determined cause of death for the victims. So how exactly is it a murder then, with Richmond being the prime suspect? Police work at its finest, folks. It looks like art does imitate real life after all. Anyway, the two detectives split up and Lazarus stumbles upon some sort of lab with a huge machine inside. Since our hero has the mental maturity and capacity of a 12-year-old, he of course presses the big red shiny button and releases all the ghosts in the machine. One of them even enters Lazarus without his consent and fuses with him. Thankfully, it's for a good reason. Unfortunately, the rest of the ghosts aren't as benevolent, with one of them snatching Anna for its nefarious purposes. Turns out the evil ghost is Sir William Hawksmoor, a medieval knight trying to bring himself back to life using the resurrection machine, because ghosts fade away due to the passage of time and eventually fall into non-existence. It's all very scientific. Lazarus must now team up with the lab's sentient computer, Power Ranger style, and hunt down all the ghosts he released. Along the way, he finds Professor Richmond, who betrays him. Then our hero becomes the ghosts, comes back to life thanks to the legacy of his name, and everyone dies except for Lazarus and Anna. What a story, huh? It's essentially a defeat all the bad guys and save the damsel in distress kind of plot. But the hilarious dialogue combined with the game's dark atmosphere gives off some strong B-movie vibes, with a little bit of that classic millennial edge. I mean, look at our guy here. Doesn't he look like the douchiest person to ever exist in any form of media? He's alright though, and I love the fact that the game doesn't take itself too seriously. There are moments of horror and desperation, but plenty of fun is thrown into the mix to relieve tension and make the adventure a fun ghost-busting experience. Ghosthunter's presentation is nothing short of impressive. From the graphics to the sound, the game is a treat all around. Bars. The textures and models are full of detail and the art style is on point. Just look at those faces. This could easily be early PS3 era graphics, 3 years before the console's release. And some of the larger monsters manage to be both graphically impressive and intimidating at the same time. Not all of them are made equal though, as some ghosts manage to be pretty scary in their design and lore, while others are just goofy little gremlins and goblins. I get it though, this isn't full-on Silent Hill horror, it's more of a campy thriller, so it makes sense that not all enemies are psychologically scaring. The worst offenders though are the gun-wielding grunts you'll encounter, as they're just simple transparent human models. So spooky. But besides those small hiccups, enemy design is surprisingly imaginative. When it comes to the areas themselves though, things are different. You'll explore various locales such as a boggy swamp, an abandoned school, a haunted ship, a prison, and a military base. Graphically, they are fine, everything looks lived in and detailed enough, but the locations are drab and uninteresting. Yeah, sure, it's a horror game. The levels aren't supposed to be vibrant and full of life anyway. But the colors are so muted, the atmosphere so drab and depressing, and there aren't any cool set pieces to break up the monotony. Well, occasionally you do come across some cool moments that would probably terrify me if I was younger, but they are too few and far apart from each other, which brings down the experience and the horror as a whole. The music doesn't help either, even though the compositions are competent and interesting. When it comes to spooky games, Akira Yamaoka's iconic scraping and screeching soundtracks come to mind. What about ambient jungle and intelligent drum and bass? No? Well, too bad, that's what you're getting here. And the crazy part is, I like it! It doesn't fit the game's horror atmosphere at all, yes, but it gives everything a more surreal and ethereal feeling, which is pretty much what Ghosts are all about actually. Some tracks are more fitting, with the classic violins and the loud bassing noises, but they're mostly at the start of the adventure. You may like it, or you may not, it's up to you. Overall, Ghosthunter is a technical marvel, with lots of fancy effects like god rays and claw physics, making the experience polished and exciting. The levels are kind of bland and the music is polarizing, but the general atmosphere manages to elevate the game into a dreamlike journey, more so than a nail-biting fight for your life. Alright, here comes the hard part, the gameplay. So you play as a ghost hunter, right? But how exactly do you hunt ghosts? Do you use state-of-the-art gadgets, complex science, and careful planning? No, actually, you just bust a cup in a ghost's ass enough times for it to get trapped inside your ghost capturing grenade. Why? Because goddammit, the Second Amendment transcends the mortal plane itself. So yeah, Ghosthunter is a third-person shooter through and through, a pretty basic one at that too. You have your standard walking mode, where you can move around freely and interact with the environment, and the aiming mode, where you can strafe and point your gun at enemies to shoot at them. Combat is painfully slow, with your movement and aiming speed being reduced to a crawl while shooting, and since you don't have any evasive maneuvers, you have to switch between moving and aiming, which is pretty clunky. Thankfully, the enemies themselves, despite being bullet sponges, are pretty easy to dodge, and you'll never be overwhelmed. You also have a variety of different weapons to choose from, like your standard pistol, a shotgun, a pulse rifle, a sniper, and a grenade launcher, making things even easier when dealing with enemies. I don't think I died once in my playthrough, which is kinda underwhelming for the horror game. But besides Lazarus, you can also control the spirit that spectrally assaulted him, Astral. Her parts play more like extended puzzle sequences, with you being able to explore areas not accessible by the detective, and using abilities from ghosts you've defeated to interact with switches and obstacles, so you can clear the path for Lazarus to continue his ghost hunting escapades. It's nothing too complex, it's just annoying that there's no indication of what is interactive unless you're right in front of it, which led to some backtracking and frustration. And speaking of backtracking and frustration, it's time to talk about the levels themselves. There are only 6, but don't worry, the game isn't short at all. In a bold move, the developers decided to start you off with the longest and worst level in the game, the swamp. Good lord, where do I begin with this shit? Trudging around in swamp water incredibly slowly? Check. Shitty stealth sections where you have to follow a lazy ghost around so it can open the next gate for you? Check. Terrible combat sections where you have to shoot down almost invisible ghosts that riddle you with bullets? Check. Boring fetch quests with confusing level design? Check. It's just an absolute clusterfuck that goes on and on and on and on and on and on for hours. 4 hours to be exact, just for one level. That's insane. Thankfully, the rest of the levels are much shorter and have a better flow to them, but there are still some annoying parts. I get it, darkness and getting lost are the key elements of a horror game. But damn, I'm not getting scared when I can barely see in front of me, with a flashlight that barely does anything and is attached to only one of my weapons. I'm just getting unbelievably annoyed. There are some cool action sequences, and I enjoy the boss fights, but Ghosthunter's main issue is that it drags on for way too long, without any variety. The gameplay, although slow, is competent and can be enjoyable, but the levels are too linear and repetitive to complement the action enjoyably. But the biggest issue for me is that it doesn't feel like you're hunting ghosts. Almost none of them require any specific strategy to defeat, besides the poltergeists, which need steam to be visible, as we all know, of course. The rest just go down with a few billion bullets, and that's all there is to it. It feels like a wasted opportunity, especially since the game nails everything else, atmosphere and presentation-wise. Ghosthunter had a lot of potential. The presentation is phenomenal, the atmosphere is spooky in a unique way, and even the gameplay is pretty serviceable. But the levels drag on for way longer than they should, the ghosts are your standard third-person shooter enemies, and there is not enough variety to keep you engaged and interested. Overall, it's an average experience, but if busting makes you feel good, and you enjoy horror and B-movie schlock, you might get a kick out of this game. Just play in short bursts to avoid burning yourself out. And that's all I had to say about Ghosthunter. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stuff. You know how it goes. Have a great day, and until next time, take care and have fun.